Part 68. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 672. Greet's head buzzed. He ran to the operating table in 3 steps at a time, and said to Cecilia, who was lying on the bed with analgesic spells on her lower body, just waiting for the operation. "Stop your operation for now. I'll save her life first. After saving her, I'll come see you again." After saying that, he turned around and ran outside. At the door of the operating room, the female knight Selena, who was allowed to come in to observe the operation and was putting on surgical clothes, subconsciously shouted, "Why? Let her get off the operating table first." Greet rushed out. While running, he shouted to Selena, who followed, "She's fine. The first stage of labor has just started. There are still more than 10 hours left. I'll deal with the other one first. That one is fatal. Umbilical cord prolapse. The umbilical cord is the blood vessel that supplies blood to the fetus from the mother. It is always inside the uterus, extends from the placenta into the amniotic membrane, and is connected to the fetus. This pipe has always worked in a humid and soft environment of 37 degrees Celsius. Once the umbilical cord is exposed outside the body, it will spasm every minute, or there is a greater possibility of being compressed. The consequence of umbilical cord spasm or compression is that the umbilical cord stops supplying blood to the fetus. Gretel once heard the teacher say this when he was rotating in the obstetrics department in his previous life. From the time when the umbilical blood flow is blocked to the fetal death in utero, it only takes 7 to 8 minutes. Every minute, even every second, is a matter of life and death for the mother and the fetus in her belly. He did not hesitate to take a picture of Cat's lightness for himself. Fast, increase the speed a little bit, run a little faster. Get the mother soon and get started. Anna, or Ms. Lena, was rescued by Appa, the silver moon deer. She was previously diagnosed with fetal malposition and was asked to do gentle exercises to adjust the fetal position. Anna did exercise and became gentler. The problem is, the gentleness in the concept of a level 7 female warrior and the gentleness in the concept of a doctor are sometimes not the same thing. Fortunately, Anna's playground and Appa's walking ground are geographically in the same area. Silver Moon Deer paced over and found that she was in a bad state. He immediately threw a healing spell at her and then picked her up on the deer's back. He galloped all the way to the small building and screamed to call the police. By the time Gretel arrived, Anna had already been put on a stretcher, with gurgling amniotic fluid under her body, and a small group of nurses surrounding her. Dots of silver light on Appa kept falling on Anna, making her feel better. "Get out of the way! Get out of the way!" Gretel rushed directly into the circle. Looking down, the female warrior looked half nervous and half in pain, curled up on the stretcher. The clothes have been untied, and the umbilical cord can be seen between the legs. He immediately leaned down. "Ma'am, please kneel face down and use your knees and elbows to support your body as much as possible. I'm going to help you push the umbilical cord in. Don't worry, I'm here." Anna's forehead was beaded with sweat, and she reluctantly nodded. Greet immediately ordered the nurses. "Hold her steady. Turn her over. 1, 2, 3. At the command, the nurses swarmed forward and flipped Ms. Anna over so that she lay face down. This 7th-level female warrior was really able to endure the pain. She supported herself steadily with just her elbows and knees. In Greet's impression, the vast majority of pregnant women with a big belly cannot do this and need the help of nurses to support them. Since he didn't need support, Greet could concentrate on the matter of umbilical cord prolapse. He knelt on the stretcher, behind the mother, and reached out to the side. "Warm salt water gauze. Hurry." Gauze soaked in warm salt water was immediately delivered to him. Greet wrapped the umbilical cord with gauze, took out a seed and held it in his hand, silently concentrating on it. In an instant, thousands of strands came out of his hand and gently wrapped the gauze. Then, he gathered his left hand into a plate shape, held up a large handful of glycerin, and applied it to the mother's abdomen. Apply quickly, spread your fingers, and activate the B ultrasound magic. Bedside B ultrasound to observe the fetal position, umbilical cord position, and umbilical cord blood flow. Under the observation of B ultrasound, the vines are controlled to expand the birth canal and return the umbilical cord, push it in and push it back into the mother's body to reduce spasm and restore blood flow. Let the vine go deeper and adjust the position of the fetus so that it rises upward to avoid pressing the umbilical cord. Gretel secretly thanked the magic while operating. If we weren't in this world, if we didn't have magic, it would be too embarrassing to have to operate the umbilical cord. The operation he had seen was that of the obstetrics teacher lying on a flat car, with one hand and most of his arm inserted into the mother's body. The teacher firmly resisted the umbilical cord and the fetus to prevent them from coming down early. Blood, amniotic fluid and various secretions were all stained on the teacher's body. To quote an onlooker's shocking description, the whole body of the mother is like a large sleeve, worn on her arm. Such an awkward posture consumes all the energy of the whole body just to lift the umbilical cord and provide services for the mother and fetus. To gain a little bit of time. After the umbilical cord retraction operation was completed here, 2 barbarian security guards came outside, one at each end. They lifted the stretcher and ran to the operating room. Greet knelt on the stretcher, concentrated slightly, and began to throw monitoring spells one by one. Fetal heart rate monitoring. Maternal ECG monitoring. Blood oxygen monitoring. Blood pressure monitoring. A series of light screens fluttered around him, following the stretcher forward quickly. The scene was particularly magical. Greet had no intention of paying attention to these, and focused all his attention on the observation results. Thank God, the umbilical cord that was pushed in by the vines has regained its vitality. The B ultrasound told him that blood was gurgling inside the umbilical cord, bringing oxygen and nutrients from the mother to the fetus. Gretel quickly glanced at the screen. The fetal heartbeat is still beating well and is not significantly accelerated, so there should be no intrauterine distress. Unfortunately, his blood oxygen monitoring magic can only be applied to the epidermis for the time being, and cannot monitor the condition of the fetus. He can only guess based on the fetal heart rate. It seems that APA's healing skills are quite powerful, and he arrived in time, so the fetus should be saved. Next, all it takes is to cut the baby out. Here, help her lie down, face up, raise the bottom of her right hip, and turn her 15 degrees to the left, Gretel ordered in a flurry. Security, get out. Preparing her skin, disinfecting her, fast, I'll do the surgery right away. Madam, your level is too high and your body is too strong. I may not be able to dissect her. As promised, I will use my skeleton. The soldier is the master of the sword, is this okay? Anna reluctantly nodded on the delivery bed. Everyone was in a hurry. Those who needed to go out went out, those who needed to be hit started, and preparations for the operation were quickly made. The next moment, there was a flash of light, and a silver skeleton appeared beside the operating table, taking the scalpel steadily. Ah! Cecilia, don't be afraid, wake up. Gretel. Unfortunately, time was too tight just now. The previous woman got off the operating table, but she didn't have time to leave the operating room. The skeleton did not frighten the mother waiting for the operation, but frightened her into fainting. Selena. Take her out. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 673. After going on the operating table, getting off the operating table, being stunned once, and so on. Ms. Cecilia finally had a cesarean section as she wished. The process went smoothly and both mother and daughter were safe. After resting and observing for 3 days at the Oak Grove Medical Center and recuperating in Nevis for half a month, she couldn't wait for her child to be 1 month old, so she ran thousands of miles under the protection of Selina and returned to the royal capital. The day after returning to the royal capital, he was summoned by the queen. "Ching Selina, Ching Ellen, you have worked hard." The young queen was sitting upright on the red velvet armchair, nodding gently to them with a smile on her face. Especially Ellen, who traveled thousands of miles while pregnant to understand the true situation at Oak Grove Medical Center. "I will definitely remember your loyalty forever." The female knight and the female magician curtsied at the same time. The queen expressed some condolences about Cecilia's condition and the baby's health, and couldn't wait to ask. "So, that medical clinic can really help mothers give birth safely and painlessly?" "Yes, Her Majesty the Queen." Thinking of the past, Cecilia's face darkened somewhat unhappily. However, out of loyalty to the royal family, she still answered seriously. "I have personally experienced that the delivery process is indeed quite safe and painless. The mother can even stay awake throughout the process and feel what is happening to her body, but with all due respect, the experience in the medical center may not be suitable for your dignity." Identity. That magician actually kicked her off the operating table for someone else. He also summoned a skeleton in front of her. Fortunately, this was done to her. What if it was done to the queen? This is disrespectful. This is a serious faux pas. That magician has no respect for the royal family at all. He is not suitable to serve the queen. Is this so? The queen felt a little longingly and raised her eyebrows in embarrassment. She has always believed in the goddess of spring water, and she is also a priest of the goddess. The health of queens, and princesses has always been taken care of by the female priests at the spring water temple in the royal capital. This has been a tradition for many years. Your Majesty, I believe that your physical safety is more important than anything else. In the silence of the room, Selina took a step forward and bowed slightly. "I stayed at the Oak Grove Medical Center for more than a month, and watched the medical clinic's diagnosis and treatment process every day. Over the past month, nearly 1,000 women gave birth at the medical center, and all of them were discharged safely. This ratio has exceeded the temple's record." She turned to Cecilia and smiled reassuringly, nodded, and then curtsied to the queen. "The founder of Oak Grove Medical Clinic, Master Nordmark, just treats all patients equally and acts according to their priorities. He does not deliberately disrespect the nobles, and, when possible, he will try to take care of everyone." Feelings. The queen was silent. Under the palm of her hand, there was a slight movement, reminding her of the existence of the fetus in her abdomen. She struggled for a moment, then smiled. "I have remembered the advice of the second minister. Don't worry, I will put my own safety first and take into account the dignity of the royal family. You two have been working hard these days, so you should take a good rest." Selina and Cecilia excused themselves. As soon as they left, the queen rang the bell on the table and called to the attendant. "Please come over, uncle." The young queen has many relatives, but the only one she can call her uncle is the deputy leader of the Knights of the Flower of Thorns, Thunder Sword Master Count Melio. According to royal tradition, the leader of the knights must be the monarch himself. This Lord Sword Master has been the only legendary warrior in the royal family for nearly 50 years, and he is in charge of the royal sacred weapon Sword of Roses and Thorns. Because he is obsessed with martial arts, he hardly cares about worldly affairs. Only when the Holy Sea of Glory invaded 5 years ago and fought a battle of that level would he take action with his sword. The Queen has invited Earl Melio to arrive soon. After listening to the Queen's question, Lord Sword Master raised his eyebrows and smiled, his half-black and half-white mustache tilted upward. "What do you think of yourself, little Annie?" Don't know. The young queen lowered her head and subconsciously hugged her belly with her slender hands. I grew up in the Spring Temple. When she was 3 years old, her mother died in childbirth. The following year, her father married the third queen. Unfortunately, that queen believed in the Lord of Radiance. The young Anne was sent to the Spring Temple. The following year, the queen gave birth to a boy and was declared the heir to the kingdom. She was deprived of her status as a princess and became her brother's servant. It can be said that if it were not for the care and protection of the Spring Water Temple, she would not even be able to grow up safely. Later, everything turned upside down. The glorious Holy See was expelled, the new queen died of illness, and the boy was deprived of his inheritance rights. The father remarried and gave birth to a new prince. His father died, and the young prince ascended the throne and died young. A group of nobles launched a rebellion, united with the glorious Holy See, and supported the son of the third queen on the throne. And always remembered that during the chaos in the royal capital, it was Count Melio who escorted her out of the royal capital, and it was the Spring Water Temple that sheltered her in a secluded rural monastery, keeping her away from the blood, fire, and war. However, while serving the goddess in the temple, she also witnessed more than one noble lady die in childbirth. Even if the priest takes action himself, there is no guarantee that everything will go wrong. I can't die. If I die, my father will have no heir. Anne raised her head slightly. The slender wheat ear-shaped crown shimmered slightly on her blonde hair, making her face extremely white. And her tone became more and more determined. When the time comes, we have to choose a successor from the distant branch, and the kingdom will definitely fall into chaos. For the sake of the kingdom, I have an obligation to ensure my own safety and live well. Then just go ahead and do it. Thunder Sword Master smiled approvingly. He casually pressed the hilt of the sword. The long sword, whose scabbard was decorated with roses and entwined with thorns, echoed the owner's wishes and let out a soft cry from the scabbard. Don't worry, I will always be on your side. I can comfort and make promises to the temple, but I can never be controlled by them. Remember, you are the supreme queen of the kingdom of Kent. Thank you, great uncle. The queen nodded gratefully. She first summoned the head of the royal mages, Cecilia's grandfather, Archmage Lafayette Seymour, and made a request to him. In this regard, His Excellency the Archmage could not agree directly, but only expressed that he could convey it on his behalf. You know, mages always have their own ideas, and the Parliament will not force a magician to do anything. Moreover, Master Nordmark is a disciple of the Lord of Thunder. The Queen expressed her understanding. Then, she summoned the chief priest of the Spring Goddess Temple, the main temple located in the royal capital, and as expected, she met with fierce opposition. Your Majesty, let alone the royal tradition, how can your noble body be touched by other men? That Nordmark mage, when he delivers a baby, he will see the mother's body with his own eyes and even touch it with his own hands. Touched. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Giolan 2020. Chapter 674. Queen Anne shrank subconsciously. From the age of 3 to 16, she grew up in the temple and was raised by the clergy. Although the Grand Temple gave her the courtesy of a princess, and although nobles often came to visit her. However, her obedience to, and even reverence for, the priest has been engraved in her bones since she was a child. I am the queen. Is the ruler of this country. He is a descendant of the spring goddess and a monarch blessed by the gods. Queen Anne thought this way, trying to cheer herself up, straightening her back and raising her chin high. She smiled slightly and looked directly at the priest, trying to be both majestic and cordial. Your Excellency, Chief Priest, I have not rejected the help of the spring water temple at any time. I have believed in the spring water goddess since I was a child and was taught by the temple. I have always respected the goddess's servers. Having said this, I paused slightly. Since he ascended the throne, the instructions from ministers and royal teachers have been echoing in his ears. You are the queen, you are the nominal supreme ruler, but this does not mean that you have the highest power. Temples, magic councils, warriors, nobles. In this world where great power comes together, you must work hard to coordinate among these forces. The queen's eyes moved from the priest to Aunt Mary, who had been taking care of her eyes moving. His eyes were soft and silent, with a little bit of sad prayer. Mommy, she said softly, I am willing to rely on you wholeheartedly. However, my mother died in childbirth. She twisted her hands, which were as slender and white as elderflowers, and her blue eyes were full of water. I just hope that in the unlikely event that magic is powerless, someone can save my life. Isn't this okay? You are a young girl, you are just a first-level priest. When facing a strong person, there is sometimes no harm in showing weakness appropriately, the palace teachers taught her this. Sure enough, Sister Mary was stunned for a moment, her whole aura dropped, and she shook her head at the chief priest. The chief priest closed his eyes tightly, as if he had aged dozens of years all of a sudden. He opened his eyes, sighed sadly, and bowed to the queen. Your Majesty, for many years, the temple has been serving you, protecting you, and doing its best. Just because of a few papers and a rumor thousands of miles away, have you lost trust in the ability and loyalty of the temple? Queen Anne choked slightly. This kind of thing is definitely not allowed to be said. Admitting that one does not believe in the magic of the great temple and wants to hire someone else is equivalent to breaking with the temple and the aristocratic group that is deeply entangled with the temple. Even if there are many other forces in the kingdom that are at odds with the spring water temple, it is a loss she cannot bear now. She could only smile, try to smile, and try to reassure the other person. Fortunately, the queen came prepared and was not alone. Behind her, the bedchamber, Countess Bradley, stepped forward and said softly. Her Majesty the Queen does not object to the emergence of the temple. She just hopes that there will be an extra layer of protection when she has to. As for tradition her voice suddenly became high-pitched. Is the dignity of the Queen and the tradition of the royal family even higher than the safety of the Queen herself and her heirs, as well as the tranquility of the kingdom? This was almost a harsh rebuke. The high priest's face stiffened and his thick eyebrows were raised. Seeing the tense situation, Sister Mary took a step forward and bent her knees slightly. Your Majesty, your concerns frighten us very much. We are also very sad about the death of the late Queen, and we understand your concerns about your first pregnancy. Regarding your wishes, what I want to say is that the temple has noticed the emergence of new technologies. We have also sent people to study. Aunt Mary bargained and haggled with the lady-in-waiting. In the end, it was decided that the spring water temple would send people to learn the cesarean section technique. If the technique could be thoroughly mastered, the Queen agreed that the female priests of the spring water temple would be responsible for her entire delivery care. Of course, one of the prerequisites for complete mastery is that the person sent to study must be approved by Oak Grove Medical Clinic. The second prerequisite is that this new technology must be approved by the Queen. Moreover, the Nordmark mage also wanted to invite him over. It's just that, unless absolutely necessary, I won't ask him to come in directly to help. After appeasing the spring temple, the Queen still had to fully exchange views with many royal families, other important nobles, and royal advisors. Some agreed, some opposed, and some were non-committal and just generally advised the Queen to be cautious. The person who opposed the most fiercely was the Queen's husband, Prince Anthony. The red-haired man was pacing up and down on the carpet in front of the Queen, his hair standing up one by one, as if it was about to burn at any time, His cheeks were tense, and the veins on his fists popped out one by one. "What's the matter, George?" Queen Anne asked him softly. "Are you also opposed to this matter? Don't you want me to give birth to our child safely and return to you smoothly?" "I'm sorry," and Prince Anthony, or rather, the youngest son of the Duke of York and the great-grandson of Queen Anne's great-grandmother, paused and turned around. He slowed down and walked to the Queen, knelt on one knee, and put his cheek on his wife's belly. I'm sorry, dear, please forgive a man's narrow-mindedness and jealousy. When I think of your body being touched by another man, I feel unbearable. I know this is for your safety, I will restrain myself." The Queen smiled and stroked his hair. "One by one, press down, let go and let them pop up, then press down again with your fingers." Her voice was soft, almost dripping with water. "My dear, it's just because you love me so much. I'm sorry, I don't want to be touched by others, but as a monarch, I must shoulder my responsibilities, and now, the most important responsibility above all else is to survive." The couple cuddled together and whispered. Thousands of miles away, the Queen's request, was conveyed to the Parliament by Archmage Seymour, the leader of the Royal Mage Corps, and then to Gretel. "You want me to deliver the Queen's baby?" When Greet received the news, he had just finished an operation, and his surgical gown and hands were covered in blood. While throwing the cleaning spell on himself, he reflexively asked Aurora, who came to deliver the letter. "What did the teacher say?" "The Lord of Thunder means to let you make your own decision." Of course Aurora came after inquiring, and the people in the Magic Council did not dare not consult the legendary mage first. "Then, the Lord of Thunder's opinion is, he can do whatever he likes. It doesn't matter if he wants to see the royal capital, or he wants to stay in Nevis. Anyway, it's the same for him." "That's right." Greet pondered. "What did the council say?" "Generally speaking, what the jury meant was that they wanted Gretel to take this trip because of the good relationship between the Parliament and the royal family, but they were not forced to do so. No one can force a legendary disciple if he doesn't want to go." Gretel thought about it and looked at his medical clinic again. The previous news was that the Queen was about 5 months pregnant, which meant that she would not give birth for another 2 months at the earliest. In 2 months, he can perform many more surgeries and accumulate more experience, which is much more convenient than living in the capital with no familiarity. "Can I go 2 months later? Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of." It's February 20th, and there are only 550 monthly tickets. Seeing that we are still far short of 1,000 tickets, I am anxious. I just want 1,000 tickets, so I can get enough to draw a prize. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 675. Although Greet asked, "Can I go again in 2 months?" in fact, of course, he couldn't tell the Queen so bluntly. You still have to be polite, after all, everyone is nominally a subject of the kingdom. He honestly spread out the letter paper, took out the endless ink pen, and began to work hard to write a handwritten letter to the Queen. Changret Nordmark plays. No, cross it out. That was the way ancient memorials were written in previous lives. In this world, communicating with the Queen is definitely not in this format or tone. Greet bit the tip of the quill sadly. Luckily the endless ink pen is a level 9 magic weapon, no matter how much he bites it, it will definitely not break. He started another line and continued writing. "Dear Her Majesty the Queen. Hello. As your loyal subject, I am more than willing to serve you. However, out of the need to accumulate experience and ensure your safety, please allow me." Cross it out, cross it out. This tone is too casual and has no sense of formality at all. You should use the tone of writing an official document. Ah, I forgot how to write it. Originally, the surgical department was inferior to the internal medicine department in terms of ritual. As the poorest and busiest emergency department, it ranked last in the hospital in terms of writing official documents. Not to mention that it has been 5 or 6 years since I traveled back in time and I have completely forgotten about writing official documents. But the more I write the paper, the more proficient I become. 1 article a month, 2 articles a month, all are large manuscripts, and I can save them to publish a book in no time. After crossing out 3 drafts in a row, Gretel fell down on the table, dying. Finally, he realized that his life could not be spent on such trivial matters as writing letters to the Queen. Aurora, Aurora, I have a few things to say. Please write them for me. Please, or you can find someone reliable to write them for me. I really can't write anymore. The boss laid it out flat, so Aurora had no choice but to take the manuscript and bite the tip of the pen hard. After writing 3 drafts in a row, I still felt that my writing was too bad. I went to the teacher to find a way to check the information, and immediately gave Archmage Carlyle a lesson. Then why are you so particular about wording? Are you a noble? Are Gretel a noble? We are magicians. Magicians only need to convey a polite appearance to the royal family. Why should we be as rigorous as nobles? Magicians don't play in aristocratic circles. Magicians don't have to bother with those rigorous and subtle words. It's just a letter, just write it. What you should be thinking about, or what you should remind Gretel to think about, is how to bargain with the royal family and get more benefits. For example, he doesn't want to get another Mage Tama. Yes. Aurora took the order and left. When I talked to Greet also felt that it made sense. It was enough to write a letter or something, but the reward could really be thought of. From Nevis to the royal capital, it seems to be 600 or 700 miles away. The flying knife that spans 600 to 700 miles is still used to treat the Queen. This, if not worth a mage tower, should be worth half a mage tower. Or at the very least, half a seat. But it's not the right time to mention this kind of thing. After all, what I am writing now is to postpone the departure date, which is equivalent to a polite refusal, and it is not easy to negotiate terms directly. After Gretel sent the reply through the Magic Council's Mage Tower system, she was waiting for the next letter from the royal family. Waiting and waiting, the spring water temple came to the door. Admittedly, the Queen was a little unhappy when she received his reply. It would be fine if this Nordmark mage was a legendary mage. A legendary mage has a transcendent status. When receiving a letter from the Queen, he could simply not reply to it and pretend that he had not seen it. Forget it if you are an archmage above level 15. The leader of the Royal Mage Corps, Archmage Lafayette Seymour, is only level 16. At this level, archmages who have not exhausted their potential and still have pursuits are mostly pursuing legends and not paying much attention to worldly affairs. But Nordmark Mage is only level 6. Level 6. Even if he is a legendary disciple, he is only at level 6 now. Even if he is noticed by many legends and praised by the legendary mage from the Black Crow Swamp next door, he will definitely be promoted to a legend within 50 years. He is only a level 6 mage now. If the Queen wants to use him, why not come 2 months in advance? Queen Anne bit her lip, crumpled the letter paper again and again, crumpled it into a ball, and then unfolded it carefully. Beside her, Selina cautiously persuaded. Actually, you don't need his help before you are 7 months pregnant. The Nordmark mage wants to stay at the medical center for a while, and also wants to accumulate more experience to deal with various situations. Selina, I know your good intentions, the Queen interrupted her persuasion and said softly. I'm just a little uneasy. That's all. Send Aunt Mary over and ask her to accompany me to pray to the goddess, and ask the goddess to bless me and the child. The content of Greet's reply was eventually leaked. The main temple of the spring water temple in the royal capital, from the priest down, everyone secretly rejoiced. It's best if you don't come. If he doesn't come, the queen will be unhappy and won't want to use him. It would be best if during this period of time, the person sent by the temple has learned everything and can perform the operation independently, so he will no longer be needed. The main temple quickly sent a message to the great temple in Nevis, asking about the study situation. However, the expectant inquiry was blocked by Sister Salia. In terms of obstetric diagnosis and delivery, we have so much to learn. To be honest, we haven't learned even half of those diagnostic spells and the results corresponding to the spell feedback. At least, I don't think I can. Totally dealing with that unexpected situation. Even you can't do it? You have been working in the field of caring for women during childbirth for so many years, and you can't handle it on your own. The high priest was a little surprised. He even tried to persuade. You have to know that the spring temple is in urgent need of people like you to restore trust in front of the queen. The main palace is very frustrated and nervous that the queen would rather let a magician serve. Aunt Thalia firmly refused. However, not long after, her disciple, 5th-level priest Lucia, quietly found the high priest. I think I can. I'm at Oak Grove Hospital, I've learned a lot, I even had a C-section. If the temple needs it, I can serve the queen. The high priest hesitated between rejecting her and reporting to the main hall that no one here can do it. Finally, he gritted his teeth and chose the third path. He personally visited Gretel and asked Lucia about her studies. Also, asked Greet if he could issue a document to prove that Lucia had completed her studies and could independently practice caesarean section surgery. No, Gretel refused without thinking. All the healers who have studied here have not yet reached the stage of independent practice. The ones who have made the fastest progress still need to study for nearly a year. What if she does it herself? The high priest asked with a glimmer of hope. Gretel answered without hesitation. She wants to start her own business elsewhere, and I can't control her. However, I will never produce supporting documents or anything like that. The great priest was helpless. He took Lucia back to the temple and quietly found a group of pregnant women from the countryside to let her try to get started. This priestess is also really smart and has successfully completed 9 caesarean sections in a row. However, in the 10th case. Why can't the bleeding stop? Why can't it stop? Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. There are only 8 days left until February 28th, and the 600 monthly tickets have not been passed yet. The author is so panicked. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Giolan 2020. Chapter 676. The only thing the high priest was glad about at this time was that he did not send Lucia to the royal capital, and asked the royal palace and even the queen to personally send someone to verify her caesarean section level. It's okay to lose face in your own home instead of in the royal capital. Of course, the better luck was that she was not allowed to deliver the baby directly to the queen. If an accident occurs on that occasion and the queen's health or even life is irreparably damaged, then the spring temple will be in dire straits. The death of a queen is not something that is as light and easy as the death of a queen. While secretly rejoicing, he quickly stepped forward and threw 2 cure serious injuries in succession. The great priest personally took action, and the effect was naturally outstanding. The bleeding stopped immediately, and there was water in the abdominal cavity. Although it still looked scary, it finally stopped gushing out. However, even if Lucia didn't dare to move anymore, within a few minutes, with a new contraction, blood started to flow out again. High priest, can you do it? How could priest Lucia dare to say that she was good at it? She took 5 or 6 steps back and subconsciously hid her hands behind her back. Her face was almost as white as the bleeding mother. The high priest looked at her coldly, but he couldn't leave the mother's belly open and leave it there. He could only take action to clean up the situation personally, and with a casual hook, he diverted the blood flowing out of his abdomen, and threw 2 more cure-serious injuries away. In the whole room, under the gaze of 6 or 7 priests, the uterus grew together, the peritoneum grew together, the muscles grew together, the skin grew together, and returned to its original appearance of completeness without any surgery. The great priest took a breath and walked away. Okay, let's figure out what to do next. Now, no one in the spring temple dared to use the knife anymore, and the mother was born again and again, but she couldn't give birth. Finally, under the auspices of Grandma Salia, the mother was sent to Oak Grove Hospital and put on the operating table. Gretel frowned as soon as he moved the knife. What happened to this pregnant woman before? Does she have a history of surgery? Aunt Salia looked away and did not dare to speak. Lucia didn't come with her at all, only another priestess forced a smile and said. How could be? Why not? You have pelvic adhesions like this, and you say you have no history of surgery. Gretel simply pointed out to them one by one. The abdominal muscles are not aligned properly, the peritoneum and the uterine wall are stuck together, the uterine wall and the bladder are stuck together. Who performed the caesarean section? As he spoke, he summoned a vine and inserted it into his pelvic cavity. Pour saline, rinse, and suction, one-stop service. Among the sounds of rushing water, only his voice kept ringing. There is so much blood left in the pelvic cavity. Is it because the bleeding was not suctioned away, or flushed, so the treatment was thrown away? If this is my student, stand up and I promise not to beat him to death. This one was not suctioned clean, it was not flushed, it was treated directly, and it also caused pelvic adhesions in a mess. It seems to be our distinguished high priest. Aunt Salia wanted to complain very much, but she didn't dare to say it. The same operation was performed by Greet with ease, and the fetus was delivered smoothly without any bleeding from the placenta. Gretel still had time to explain to them. In this operation, the placenta grows on the outer side. When performing the surgery, you must pay attention to avoid the placenta's position. The key is to explore in advance. Once you have seen the ultrasound, you will have an idea, and nothing will happen. After the operation was completed and the mother made arrangements, Gretel was in the mood to ask Aunt Salia what happened. This pregnant woman was definitely not sent here for no reason. Who performed her caesarean section? This, Mage Nordmark, you'd better stop asking. Sister Salia hesitated. The question was asked urgently, but he only said one sentence. I promise this will never happen again. No one will perform related surgeries without your approval. It's Lucia, isn't it? Gretel looked directly into her eyes. The old woman avoided her eyes in shame and did not answer. Greet said quietly. I don't let her or others do surgery independently, not to monopolize this skill, but because they really don't have the ability to practice independently. Aunt Salia, to be fair, have I ever refused to teach anyone? Aunt Salia shook her head sadly. It can be said that Gretel couldn't be more dedicated in teaching surgical skills and various medical skills. As for Lucia, it's really her own fault and she overestimates her capabilities. Then, she heard a calm word, directly above her head. That Lucia, please let her go back and never come again. Mage Nordmark. Aunt Salia raised her head suddenly, her eyes full of shock. She just dash. Is it just a momentary rush for quick success? Already you know you made a mistake? You won't do it again in the future. Gretel asked 3 questions in a row. Before Sister Salia could answer, he had already finished speaking. I don't want to teach her anymore, not because she is eager for quick success, but because she puts her own fame and fortune above the safety of her patients. She knows she is not capable enough, but insists on forcing the operation. She has never performed an independent surgery yet. You just pulled the hook and then you dared to go directly to the surgery. How courageous. The doctor training system and the surgical grading system are a joke. Every rule is a lesson learned in blood, paved by the patient's life and health. His voice suddenly turned serious. As a healer, you must first consider the patient's safety at all times. If you don't have this belief, I won't teach her anything, so as not to cause more trouble in the future. With a scalpel in hand, you can cause more trouble by acting recklessly than simply throwing away healing skills. Aunt Salia hesitated to speak, and in the end, she just let out a long sigh. She softened her voice and said slowly, I cannot let Lucia come over from now on. I can even restrain her, never use cesarean section again, and I won't claim that I learned the technique from you. But, what about the others? After others have completed their studies, I will write them certification letters and add my secret seal. Greet has thought about this problem for a long time. When it comes to human life, not just cats and dogs can practice. In the previous life, there was the medical practitioner examination, and in the era before that, there was the certification issued by the Medical Doctors Association. So, regarding cesarean section surgery, or even a certain type of surgery or a certain type of treatment method in the future, who can practice independently and who cannot practice independently, let me be the certifier. Aunt Salia nodded slightly. The certification letter with the secret seal is indeed sufficient proof for the nobles and lords who invite the doctor. But she had other questions. What if those people didn't learn it at all, or only learned it half-heartedly, and then claimed to be your students in remote areas and ruined your reputation? Oh, that Greet replied lightly. Every year when I certify a group of students, I just mention it in Arcane or Magic. These two journals are ordered by all major mage towers, right? Don't speak so lightly. Don't make it sound like you can publish an article in the top journal anytime you want. Oh, it seems like the person in front of me can really do it if he wants to. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. Please give me a few more monthly passes. There is still 1/4 left at the end of the month. The author is far away from even 2/3 of 1,000 monthly passes. T. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Giolan 2020. Chapter 677. One of the consequences of the Lucia incident was that the spring water temple never sent anyone here again. It was called studying, but it was actually a shortcut. Greet estimated that the temple in Nevis probably told the main temple about the matter, and then they felt that they couldn't afford to lose face, right? The second consequence is that Gretel will have a hospital where he can perform surgeries in the capital. Of course, that hospital is not his property, but was established in the name of the Queen and is called the Royal Maternity and Infant Hospital. However, Greet doesn't care about this at all. As long as there is a place where he can perform surgeries that can keep him feeling good and accumulate data, he will be happy. As for the establishment of this hospital, is it because the Queen is not confident about his level and wants to personally see his success rate record in the capital? Who cares? So, 1.5 months after Greet received the Queen's invitation, he finally set off from Nevis, took a boat south, and came to the royal capital all the way. The reason why we need to take a boat instead of having 3 people crowded on Appa's back like the last time we returned home is because we brought a large group of people with us on this trip. The Order of the God of Nature, Pastor Joanna, who has advanced to the 5th level, is a surgical assistant. Representative of the Spring Temple, 13th level priest Sister Salia, treatment assistant and surgical assistant. Cyrilla, the head nurse, as well as a circulating nurse and an instrument nurse. Bernard, henchman and bodyguard, and captain of hospital security. 2 midwives of the highest caliber selected from Oak Grove Hospital. And of course Appa. Lovely Appa, loyal Appa, majestic Appa, Appa with its own street cleaning effect. I must bring it with me on this trip. Because it carried Appa, the extraordinarily wide ship set sail from the port of Nevis, sailed out of the long fjord, and headed south. The blue waves are rolling, the white gulls are flying, and the moist and warm sea breeze in spring is blowing against our faces, making everyone feel relaxed and happy. The Kingdom of Kent consists of 2 large islands in the east and west, and a series of surrounding small islands. Ships sail between the 2 large islands. This route is not the closest, but it sails all the way in the hinterland of the kingdom, avoiding the warships of the glorious Holy See as much as possible. After twists and turns, we traveled thousands of miles south, entered the fjord again, and landed at Port Bliss on the big island to the east. Then he went all the way east and walked another 150 miles overland to reach the royal capital, waiting for the Queen's summons. It's so slow. Cyrilla rocked on Appa's back. This section of the road went really slowly, with boats and carriages dragging along, and it took almost half a month. And there are no patients to see, no experiments to do, it's extremely boring. If she had known that this was how she came, she and Greet would have flown over directly by letting someone else take the boat, or they would have taken Appa all the way and calculated the time to meet up. Oh, wouldn't it be nice to walk along and see the scenery in various places? Gretel comforted her with a smile. The customs in the southern part of the Kingdom of Kent, especially near the royal capital, were different from those near Nevis and Heartland City. The fields are flat and stretching, and there are small squares everywhere as far as the eye can see, and there are people working on each one. In comparison, there are workshops everywhere near the city of Nevis, and large tracts of land near the city of Heartland are used for grazing. The houses are clusters of dense wooden houses, surrounding large and small castles. Apart from the castle, few buildings are visible. The fields near the royal capital are already full of green in the season. Cyrilla clearly remembered that when they first set out, Nevis was still covered in frost and the ground was always covered with ice and snow. Okay, let's just treat it as a fun. Miss Yinlong was reluctantly comforted. I hope there are some interesting things in the capital, especially the palace. Don't let me down. They stayed at the hotel near the royal capital where the parliament received the magicians. Grandma Salia took the students to pay homage to the main hall of the royal capital, waiting for the Queen's summons. The message was sent in on the first day, and I got a reply the next day. The Queen will summon Master Nordmark and his party in 3 days' time at the royal villa where she is resting. Well, mainly Mage Nordmark, Sister Thalia, Pastor Joanna, and Miss Sarah. The Queen may not necessarily summon the others in person, but it is best to go together, just in case the Queen has a whim and wants to call over to ask a few words. So how far is Bwin from our place? Gretel muttered and went to get ready. When summoned by the Queen, at least the clothes and grooming should look decent. And, at least you can't walk there on 2 legs, right? It would be rude to think of 2 or 3 people squeezing on Appa's back. Ah, you don't have to worry about any of this. Archmage Seymour, the leader of the Royal Mage Corps, promptly sent someone in the name of the Mage Corps and the Parliament. The person who came is the steward of Master Seymour. He has served his family for several generations and is very skilled in etiquette. You are a person sent by the Parliament, and the Royal Mage Group will arrange everything for you. A carriage will pick you up the day before the audience, so you can just ride there. What about the clothes? According to general etiquette, when a magician meets the Queen, wearing a magician's robe is a formal dress. It is not rude wherever you go. The lady can dress more beautifully. The magician group has ready-made clothes, tailors, and jewelry can be loaned. The butler, with a kind and respectful smile, directed the servants to unload several large boxes from the carriage. 2 boxes of ready-made clothes, 1 box of various silks and satins, 1 box of accessories, and a small box of various jewelry. Although this Miss Sarah does not have the level of a spellcaster, the news from the council is that she should be treated with special respect, even more than the mage Nordmark. Well, as long as you are a beautiful lady, you will definitely not be able to resist the temptation of new clothes and jewelry. He ordered the two maids to sort out the ready-made clothes and unfold them in front of Sarah. Mr. Crowley, the tailor who has been working with Mage Tower for a long time, directed his assistants to take out the satin from the box, hang it on his hands one by one, and unfold it in a fan shape. In the guest house, a soft brilliance immediately shone. Mr. Crowley himself adjusted the mage badge on his chest and opened an atlas. There are all kinds of styles, all of which are popular this year, for Cyrilla to choose from. What? Too late to do it? Mr. Crowley said, I am a magician of the transformation system. Although it is limited to qualifications and is stuck at the threshold of level 2 to level 3, it is trivial to make a fancy dress or something in one night. Cyrilla happily followed the tailor's hand, turning the pages of the album. Low-cut tops, backless tops, large skirts, small skirts, high buns, wavy curls. Why are these skirts so tight? She pouted in dissatisfaction. Also, the gemstones of this jewelry are too bad. I will produce the gemstones, and you will make them for me. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 678. Miss Silverdragon not only gave the order, she also immediately provided the gems. No matter how she acted, a lot of jewelry fell out of the void. Before it even landed, it immediately jumped into the sky, orbited Sarah, and spun into a galaxy. Red, orange, yellow, green, blue, purple, gold, silver, and black and white, the room is full of light and dazzling flowers. Mr. Crawley pointed his finger in the air. Archmage Seymour's butler, Mr. Alton, froze in place holding the jewelry box, as if his whole body had been struck by a petrification spell and turned into a human-shaped jewelry shelf. The two maids and the two tailors' assistants were stunned beside Sarah, not even noticing the silk falling off their arms. Joanna, who was invited to pick out clothes together, slowly opened her mouth and felt that all her sanity had been sucked clean by those jewelry. Only Greet still maintains a little sanity. After all, he has also visited museums and seen various jewelry displays. Moreover, he also visited the treasure room of Dragon Cave. Even if you pass by the treasure room, you have seen the scale of the treasure. Gretel never asked about the treasure that Sarah might possess, but she was still a little prepared in her heart. However, this did not prevent him from becoming angry and shouting. Sirui Ladash! Don't show your wealth in vain. Don't show off your treasures for no reason. Especially since there are legends and many strong people above level 15 in the city, you are not the strongest one. To take a step back, even if you want to make jewelry, at least lay these gems flat so that the jewelry maker can pick them. Sarah turned her head and stuck out her tongue quickly. As soon as she moved, the whole room came alive. People picking up silk were picking up silk, and people were closing jewelry boxes. They were all busy. Mr. Crowley, on the other hand, took a step forward and took out a piece of black velvet from the box, shook it out and spread it on the table. Miss Silverdragon pointed her hand, and the jewels flew over and poured onto the velvet, like a rainstorm of pearls and gems. Mr. Crowley was glared at again, and then he quickly stepped forward to look at the jewelry. Gretel also leaned over to take a look, and saw that the 3-foot square table was piled full of various pearls and gems. Diamonds, rubies, sapphires, emeralds, amber, opal, amethyst, coral, white pearls, black pearls, gold pearls. The radiance intertwined and circulated, rising nearly a foot high above base Han. Fortunately, the lighting in the room was made of eternal flames, which would not flicker like candles. Otherwise, if the table of gems fell over, the reflected light would be like a spotlight, shooting back and forth in the room. At this moment, Gretel had only one thought. Fortunately, the cut of these gems is not good. They are not the 57 facets, 74 facets, 88 facets, or 200 facets of the previous life. If it were really that kind of cut, I'm afraid his eyes would have been blinded by the flash. He was always like this, and Mr. Crowley stood beside him, looking even more dazzled. After looking at it for a long time, I couldn't help but stretched out my hands, picked up a handful of gems, and came closer to look at it. This is a blue diamond. I saw the last blue diamond of this size on the Queen's scepter. This is an emerald. The late king once wanted to find 2 emeralds of this color to match the Queen with a pair of earrings, but in the end he couldn't find them. This is a golden pearl, so big, so round, a golden pearl without any flaws. Sarala stood watching with a smile, then suddenly took a step forward and held up a handful of gems exactly the same. When you spread your fingers slightly, you can hear jingle, jingle, jingle. Those jewels fell down like a waterfall, leaving a crisp piece on the treasure mountain. Mr. Crowley was startled. This. Sarala didn't care about his attitude. Instead, she turned her head and saw Greet looking at her with a smile, without the slightest hint of surprise or pity. The corners of her eyes were crooked, and her smile was sweeter and more cheerful. Fortunately, Mr. Crowley also came from Vanity Fair, and he quickly recovered after losing his temper for a moment. He shook off the second piece of black velvet, spread it on the small table next to him, and began to dexterously select gems. The lady's hair is a very beautiful bright silver. This color can be matched with darker gemstones. These emeralds are good, and with broken diamonds, they can be made into pieces of flowers and leaves, and the crown can be made into a vine shape. I don't like green ones. Sarala categorically denied. Mr. Crowley choked, Miss Elf, don't you like green crowns in the shape of mosaics and vines? Your hobbies are really special. But there is no way, the customer's requirements come first. He thought for a while and skillfully picked out a set of rubies. These rubies are also very beautiful, bright, and warm, and they will be very eye-catching on the lady's hair. Sarara tilted her head and looked at the gems, then at the crown pattern that Mr. Crowley pointed out to her, and shook her head again. Mr. Crowley was not discouraged and picked out a set of sapphires, diamonds, and matching them into the shapes of crowns, necklaces, and earrings. The lady's eyes are a very noble silver blue color. It would be very suitable to set them off with sapphires and diamonds, like the sea with splashing waves. Just for the set of main stones, I changed 3 sets in one go. There are actually enough diamonds to match. Big dog owner. Fortunately, the sapphire suit satisfied Sarara. She picked through the album and selected a set of double drop-shaped diamond-encrusted necklaces and a wheat ear-shaped crown. Then, he picked out a pair of earrings with 2 sapphires on top and bottom and diamonds around them. That's it. By the way, put this, and this dash. She casually pointed at the emeralds, rubies, and a batch of pearls and corals that she had picked out earlier. Help make jewelry too. Mr. Crowley. Is this going to tire me out? Do you want my old life? Even if I am a transformation magician who can shape jewelry with my mental power, if I have to make so many jewelry in one go, my mental power will be drained. Before the words of complaint could even reach the tip of his tongue, a tinkling, rain-like sound sounded again. This time, what poured out of Sarara's hands were shiny gold coins with the king's head on them. If I'm satisfied with the result, these will be my rewards. Mr. Crowley's spirits were instantly raised. He is just a tailor of the Royal Mage Corps. Not the Royal Tailor. This may be the only opportunity in my life to use so many gemstones of such good quality to make jewelry. Be sure to catch it. If these jewelry are passed down, he can also leave his name in history. By the way, miss, what kind of dress do you want to wear? This one. No problem. Jenny, Kathy, let me measure you, please try on the petticoat underneath first. The two tailor assistants immediately followed Sirrah to the inner room. Not long after, the size was handed over to Mr. Crowley. The transformation mage closed his eyes and concentrated. Not long after, the white silk lining, whale baleen, silk rope, etc. all rose up one by one. A bustle with a waistband was assembled out of thin air and carried into the inner room by two tailor's assistants. After a rustling sound, Sarala stood on tiptoes and walked out cautiously. It feels so strange, it's so tight that my waist is deformed. I feel like I can't breathe. Greet, am I beautiful? As she spoke, she turned lightly on her toes. As soon as he turned to face Greet, he heard a bang sound, and the silk ropes tied to the back of the waist exploded one by one, almost hitting the tailor's assistant in the face. Well, Sarala. For the sake of her own safety in the future, Greet had no choice but to persuade her. You look good in a light skirt like that, you don't have to wear a big skirt like this. But I saw my aunt wearing it too. It looks good on her. I haven't seen it. However, it seems that the legendary mage of the conjuration system, Ms. Helena of Song of Deep Blue, also likes to wear this kind of skirt with large bustles. Greet searched hard and tried to think about the mentality of the big guys wearing such troublesome clothes. They probably just use their magic power to support their movements, right? It means, I can still fight in such troublesome clothes. But Sirrah, you don't have to imitate them, just wear what you like best. Miss Silverdragon tilted her head and thought. After thinking for a while, he waved his hand generously, cancelled this heavy and annoying plan, and chose a light, close-fitting long skirt. It looks beautiful too. Then, she swiped at the hands of the tailor assistants and picked out a very light blue silk similar to fish belly white. She happily shook it out and draped it on her body. Please, make it for me so that the blue gets darker little by little from top to bottom. The lightest one should be this shallow, and the deepest one, to the edge of the skirt, should be as deep as the dark blue sea water. Mr. Crawley's eyes darkened. Miss Rich, are you going to test your skills as a transformation mage again? This kind of gradient color cannot be dyed with current dyeing technology, so we can only use mental power to guide it. Then add gems, pearls. Add more and more to make waves, clouds, and all kinds of flowers. By the way, there is also a fur cloak. Look, I have a lot of ermine here. There is a piece on the tail. Click a little black dot, it's fun. Here, miss, Mr. Crawley replied, wiping his sweat. The ermine with the black tail tip is exclusive to the royal family. Although I don't know why you have so many ermine skins, let's try not to wear other people's exclusive clothes when we meet the queen. That's it, Sirrah wanted to say very much, what does the royal family have to do with me, but seeing Gretel trying to wink at her from the side, she didn't want to cause trouble. She thought for a moment, waved her hand, and smashed down a large pile of fur. Then use this. Ice bear skin. Level 9 monster. Make me a great cloak. Heavy, rich, rare, and not against the rules. Miss, you have really achieved the ultimate in luxury. The problem is, I am only a level 2 magician. My strength and mental power may not be enough to cut a level 9 ice bear skin. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. Seeing as there are 3,000 words tonight, vote for me as much as possible. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 679. Stimulated by sufficient remuneration and a large amount of rare jewelry, Mr. Crowley, the royal tailor of the Royal Mage Group and a second-level transformation mage, worked hard and finally made the clothes and jewelry that Cyrilla wanted on time. Of course, Gretel's help is inevitable. This includes lending a dark gold skeleton and cutting the ice bear skin according to the lines drawn by Mr. Crowley. Including threading, let the dark gold skeleton help sew the ice bear skin, and add various decorations on it. And most importantly, help red gems. Use the spiritual power of a magician to sense, sort out, and stimulate the magical power inherent in gemstones. Various gems are important casting materials for magicians, as well as objects for burning and storing magic. The first step in burning magic is to sense the inner condition of the gem. What is the nature of the magic power solidified in this gem? In which direction? Is it lively and enthusiastic, or deep and stable? What direction of magic is suitable for recording? The gem that solidifies the magic power of ice, burns the magic of fire, and blows it up for you every minute. It's not impossible, but it requires extremely high control, and the gems burned in this way can only be used as bombs. In short, every gem must go through the process of gem reading before it is inscribed. As for the gems that have been read and stimulated, if nothing else is mentioned, the light effect is beyond the original level. Gretel also understood from this why magicians in this world don't pay attention to gem cutting. No need at all. A gem that has been inspired by magical power has its own light source. 3 days passed and it was finally time to be summoned by the queen. Greet, Sarah, and Pastor Joanna rode in the carriage provided by the council, followed by Grandma Salia's carriage, and rumbled toward the villa. The other people brought by Greet followed behind in a simpler carriage, but also bearing the 6-pointed star emblem of the Magic Council, so that the queen could summon them at any time. Of course, Bernard was not included in the carriage crew. The barbarian was wrapped in a traditional animal skin vest, carrying his precious big bone club, and riding on Appa's back. Along the way, I walked through the city with swagger, and everyone looked at me. What kind of monster is this? It's so tall and big that it takes up the whole street. Riding this kind of monster to the palace is so. How barbaric. The closer you get to the villa, the more nobles' carriages are on the road. There is an endless stream of nobles who are summoned to have an audience, or who come to the palace to serve the queen on a daily basis, and they soon merge into a traffic flow. The tree-lined avenue outside the villa is not very wide and can only accommodate 2 carriages traveling in parallel or in opposite directions. As Appa was walking on it, the carriage coming from the opposite side had to be carefully avoided. Who is this? A barbarian? Is there such a thing as a barbarian for the person the queen summoned today? Let me see, the carriage in front is hung with the emblem of the Magic Council. No wonder, these spellcasters have no respect for the nobles. There's nothing you can do about it, magicians. They've never been as observant of etiquette as the nobles. It's a good thing they didn't fly over directly to have an audience. No matter what, it's too. Hush. Keep your voice down. You can't beat him. High-level monsters are intelligent, and if they hear you talking bad about them, they'll give you a slap and you'll have no place to complain. The nobles along the way whispered to each other and looked sideways. Greet didn't hear it at all. Sarah turned her ears around, and was soon pulled by Greet to point out the scenery on the avenue. After a while, the carriage drove to the palace, and soon a guard came over to guide. Mage Nordmark. Please come this way, and everyone please come this way. Everyone in Gretel followed his guidance, walked through the garden, and headed into the palace. The Bwin is different from the main hall of the palace. It is completely wrapped in a garden. It is early spring, and the eyes are full of goose yellow and tender green, which makes people feel relaxed and happy soon. The terrain of the entire garden is flat, but the hedges and tree walls are high and low, scattered in an orderly manner, and the flower beds are well layered, which are offset by the scattered green spaces and pools, forming independent small landscapes. Cyril looked left and right, dizzying. Oh! This little fountain pool is so cute. This shade is so comfortable. It turns out to be a hedge of flowers here. It's a pity that there are only a few here and there. It would be even more beautiful if the flowers were in full bloom. In the garden, ladies holding small lace umbrellas and noblemen in straight military uniforms passed by from time to time. When they saw them coming, they all stopped and watched. They whispered to each other, pointed, and then turned away before Gretel and others approached. Sirrah was unaware of them and just visited happily. For convenience, she only wore an elf ranger outfit when riding a carriage and entering the palace. It was light and convenient, and not luxurious at all. People with poor eyesight can't tell anything from a distance except that she is an elf. Along the way, everyone was handed from the hands of the guards to the hands of the maids, stepped into the majestic and solemn castle-like palace, and walked through the more than 1,000-meter-long corridor filled with portraits of royal family members, and were invited to take a break in the small hall. As soon as the person walked away, Sarala jumped up. Quick, quick. Where are my clothes? Where are my jewelry? I want to dress beautifully. Help me change it. Gretel quickly patted the space bag, poured out all the clothes, and then pulled out a piece of light and shadow to separate the dressing room. The dark gold skeleton had a dress draped over one arm and a jewelry box in one bone hand. It pattered over and ran back again. Joanna held back her laughter and stepped forward to help. 2 nurses and 2 midwives were also busy helping her change clothes, comb her hair, and put on jewelry. While they were still hurriedly dressing up, the door of the small hall was knocked twice. A maid with a solemn look opened the door and came in. Mage Nordmark. Aunt Thalia, Miss Fleshgret, Miss Joanna. Please come with me and prepare for the Queen's summons. Her voice suddenly got stuck. The light and shadow fluctuated silently. Sarala held an ice bear skin cloak in one hand and walked out with a meteoric stride. The top of her hair, neck, ears, and skirt were all sparkling with jewelry. Sarala? Are you dressed up? Gretel smiled and greeted him. Sarala naturally stood beside him and tilted her head to the royal maid. Are you okay? Let's go. This interview was neither too formal nor too private. The Queen was sitting on her favorite armchair in the tea room, surrounded by a group of intimate maids, talking and laughing. Your Majesty, it is said that among the people who came to see you today, there is an elf. Your Majesty, let us stay and take a look. I still don't know what the elf looks like. Yes, it is said that they all use green leaves and vines to make clothes, and flowers to make jewelry. Thinking about it, they are very beautiful. Before he finished speaking, the door of the tea room opened silently. Just 2 jingles were heard, and the coffee spoons in the hands of the maids closest to the Queen fell on the cup holders, making a few soft crunching sounds. On Miss Elf's silver hair, diamonds shine brightly, sapphires are like blue sea waves, pearl crystal waves roll up on the skirt, and the light of the jewelry even overwhelms the crown on the Queen's head. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Giolan 2020. Chapter 680. It turns out that money can't solve all problems, but it can solve most of them. When Sarah walked toward the Queen step by step, wearing a sapphire and diamond crown, an ice bear skin cloak, and a gradient silk dress with waves of pearls billowing, more than one female officer smiled. Pearls and gems that are not inferior to the Queen mean a lot of wealth behind them. The pure white ice bear skin cloak is draped easily on the shoulders, symbolizing powerful force value. Not to mention knocking it down and cutting it, just wearing such a large piece will make the steps of a magician below the 5th level heavy. Not to mention, what flashes among those gems is obviously the glow of magic. While they were saluting, Queen Anne quickly threw a detection magic and then closed her eyes reflexively. That elf girl, the drop-shaped silver blue pendant on her forehead, what level of magic item is it? This level of light is at least one level brighter than the bracelet she wears close to her body, which seals the 2 4th level magic spells cure fatal wounds and spell immunity. No wonder the information provided by the Royal Mage Group was vague about this young lady, but it reminded her to be extra courteous. Greet looked down at the ground, pricked up his ears, and sure enough he heard a few subtle inhalations. Glancing to the side, he saw Sarala lowering her head in the same manner, but curved the corners of her mouth and blinked at him quickly. Well, you're just here to show off, right? Thinking of this, Gretel raised his head and stood up straight, and sure enough he saw the smile on the Queen's lips, which was not only humble and gentle, but also a little more cordial. And the arrogance that many of the female officials around the Queen had previously felt was completely wiped out in an instant. Before he could take a closer look, the Queen smiled brightly and asked Gretel and others to sit down. She fully fulfilled her duties as a host and greeted each of them. He praised Gretel as a young man who advanced to level 6 mage in 5 years, and even mentioned his experience of going to the battlefield for the kingdom and fighting against the glorious Holy See. Thank you to Aunt Salia for coming all the way in her old age and lovingly recalling her feelings for the Spring Temple and her experience of growing up under the care of the nuns of the temple. Chat with Joanna about her hometown of Heartland City, and praise the Order of the God of Nature for its long-standing contribution in taking care of the poor in the kingdom. Showing just the right amount of curiosity about Sarala and envy of her ranger experience. Every word, every smile makes people feel like a spring breeze. At least Sister Salia and Joanna were obviously moved. Gretel watched with cold eyes. Every time the Queen spoke to them, their heartbeats and blood pressure would soar to a peak. As for Sarala at least didn't show any obvious impatience, and was still willing to sit here for a while, wasn't she? After some cordial and elegant greetings, the Queen supported her waist with her right hand and awkwardly changed her posture. The female officer beside her quickly came over to help her. The Queen smiled and patted the back of her hand, then turned to Greet and his party. Master Nodmark, and everyone, thank you for traveling all the way from Nevis to the royal capital. From now on until delivery, my pregnancy and the future of the kingdom are entrusted to you. Greet hesitated for a moment, torn between don't worry, I will try my best and leave it to me. He always felt that either wording was a bit weird. Aunt Salia waited for a moment. Seeing that he didn't answer, she quickly saluted and picked him up. I am willing to serve His Majesty. Ah, this is the format for talking to the Queen. Although Gretel has received emergency training, the things he just put in it are not always easy to use. Hearing Sister Salia speak, he breathed a sigh of relief and immediately repeated. I am willing to serve His Majesty. Okay, magician, Queen Anne repeated it in her heart, the smile on her face remained unchanged, and she raised her hand to signal to them. Now that I'm here, can you please take a look at my physical condition? He said please look, but he shrank back slightly and crossed his hands in front of him. Gretel looked at the Queen's body language, the smile on her face remained unchanged, and turned to Sarala. You come. As he spoke, he raised his hand and clapped it, and the golden treasure box in the space bag fell on the tea table with a bang. In an instant, there were thousands of golden lights and thousands of auspicious auras, and the female officials around the Queen, 2 of whom were younger, let out a soft intake of breath again. After all, the Queen has seen a lot of gold and silver jewelry, nothing unusual. She just asked curiously. This is a magic tool that burns meditation images. I'll check it for you. I'll try not to get started. I'll take a look after they finish checking it. The Queen nodded and said nothing. Next to her, the female officer closest to her took a step forward and stood between the Queen and the golden treasure box. How does this magic weapon work? Where can I order it? Can we order one? I don't know how it works. Greed spread his hands generously. This was designed by Lord Almeida of Philosopher's Rose, and the vice president of the Alchemy Guild personally led people to make it. I'm not sure if you can order it. Maybe you can send a message to the Alchemy Guild. When he announced the name of the legendary mage, more inhaling sounds were heard among the female officers one after another. Only the queen's smile remained unchanged. She stood up holding the hand of the female officer, made a pleased gesture to Cyrilla and Sister Salia, and entered the other room. The female spellcasters soon followed. Gretel was left alone with the female officers, looking at each other with polite smiles. Well, this older female officer looked at me with a very stern look. When she stared at me, her nasolabial folds almost extended to her cheeks. You don't need to look at me like a thief. If it's not absolutely necessary, I don't want to touch the queen directly. It's very troublesome. This female officer in a green skirt, you don't look good, and your breathing is a little too shallow. Is it too tight around the waist and uncomfortable? This young lady, it seems that you were the one staring at Cyrilla's crown just now, staring the hardest, right? There's no point in staring. Even I don't have the guts to snatch the jewels from the dragon clan. After a while, the door leading to the inner room of the tea room opened, and Cyrilla came out gracefully. He flashed past the female officers and put a chip and a long note directly into Greet's hand. I think it's okay. Just take a look. Greet stood up first, nodded to the queen, and then looked down at the electrocardiogram. The heart rate is normal, the chip is stimulated, and a closer look at the B ultrasound image shows that the fetal development is generally normal, and there is no placenta previa or anything. As for the fetal position and the like, this will have to be determined until delivery. There is no point in worrying about this now. Congratulations to Her Majesty the Queen. The current situation is everything is normal. He bowed slightly and congratulated the Queen. There was a lot of singing around her, and the female officials congratulated the Queen one after another. The Queen smiled. Thank you for your hard work. Well, during this period, I would also like to trouble you to come to the palace every week to check on my situation. This is my clerical lady, Baroness Vitegwe. She will guide you to the palace in the future. The middle-aged female officer with shallow breathing and pale face that Gretel had noticed before took a step forward and greeted them. The Queen continued to introduce. If you want to continue treatment at the maternity and infant hospital, she will also make arrangements for you. Knowing that the interview was over, Gretel breathed a sigh of relief, quickly expressed his willingness to accept, and stood up to leave. Baroness Wittig stepped forward with a smile, opened the door herself, and made a pleased gesture. Cyrilla followed Gretel out of the tea room. The group of people walked for about 10 steps in silence. Cyrilla's ears turned left and right, and she suddenly smiled. Hee, they are so fun. What's the matter? Greet turned to look at her. Cyrilla looked at the Baroness leading the way and shook her head without answering. It wasn't until she walked through the atrium and was ushered into a small banquet hall, and saw Sister Salia and Pastor Joanna washing their hands, that she leaned into Gretel's ear and whispered. They were saying just now, am I not an elf? Why do I like these pearls and gems so much? They feel like dragons. He. Greet held his forehead. Miss, I know you are a dragon, that's why you have such a large collection, but, where is your point of laughter? Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Giolan 2020. Chapter 681. Greet had no idea how noble the Baroness' status was. However, even if the level 6 magician/level 6 priest does not include a bunch of bonuses, they can at least be on an equal footing with each other. How big an official the Queen's clerk is beyond Gretel's knowledge system. In the Kingdom of Kent, official positions are not divided into grades 1 to 9, if you have to apply it, it is probably similar to Bingbai, the supervisor of ceremonies. In any case, the clerical lady assigned by the Queen to deal with the situation, Baroness Wittig, is quite capable. Yan Xiao Yan invited Greet and others to have lunch. The dishes were rich and exquisite, taking care of everyone's taste. More importantly, there is plenty of preparation for the guests' astonishing appetites. Even if Cyrilla ate plate after plate of lamb legs, steaks, foie gras, sponge cakes, and waffles in front of her, she remained unmoved and calmly directed the servants to serve the dishes. And no cuts were made to Bernard's or any of the other guests' portions. This kind of calmness and scheduling ability won everyone's favor. So, when the banquet was over and Baroness Wittig took them to the Royal Maternity and Infant Hospital, Cyrilla actually sat down in the carriage and gave up her territory to the Baroness. Yes, Her Majesty the Queen is kind and used her private property to build a maternal and infant hospital to benefit poor pregnant women in the capital. I have been following up since the beginning of the construction. Baroness Wittig leaned upright on the back of the carriage chair, folded her hands, and her blue eyes sparkled. But I am not a spellcaster, let alone a healer. So please take a look, is there anything that needs improvement? The maternity and infant hospital is not far from the Queen's villa, and it only takes about half an hour by carriage. He turned a corner on the boulevard outside the palace, crossed a field, and was close to the edge of the royal capital. Then, the carriage became bumpier and bumpier, and the road became narrower and narrower. Baroness White-Eiger looked at several spellcasters carefully. Cyrilla was looking out of the car window, her face full of curiosity, and Thalia was looking intently, twisting a string of rosary beads in her hand with a compassionate expression, and Gretel. Greet looked around, and was actually quite satisfied. This is a good location. The carriage stopped, and Gretel was the first to jump out of the carriage, looking left and right. The surrounding buildings are low and simple, obviously close to slums, but only in this way can poor pregnant women get treatment most conveniently. At the entrance of the hospital, an avenue extends to both sides. Although the road is not well built, it can still be used for horse-drawn carriages, which means that small citizens, workshop owners, and middle-income people also have the possibility to come here. If he saw it correctly, in the deepest part of the hospital, in the farthest direction from the slums, there was a small building surrounded by a rose fence. The exterior walls are actually painted in a light red color. At first glance, you can tell that it is for nobles. How many wards are there here? Are there midwives? Are there any spellcasters who have arrived first? How many pregnant women are currently admitted, and what other facilities are there? He asked a series of questions. Baroness Whittaker also answered one by one. The construction of the maternity and infant hospital started 1.5 months ago, and it was completed a month later and immediately started treating pregnant women. So far, at least the wards in the slums are full. Of course, there are only 20 wards, each with only 3 people, so it is difficult not to overcrowd them. In this area, 30 midwives are employed to work there. Each one is paid 1 gold coin per month, with 3 shifts of 12 hours off. As for the small white building for small businessmen, workshop owners, city hall clerks, craftsmen, low-level military officers, and other middle-income people, it currently has 10 rooms, each with a bed. The quota of midwives in Xiabalu is 15, and they also work in 3 shifts of 12 hours each. The small building painted in red, also known as the Rose Building, is only used by nobles with titles and spellcasters. There are 5 rooms in total, and each one is empty. 5 midwives have nothing to do and hang around there every day. At this point, everyone has already entered the hospital building. Between the poor ward and the small white building, there stood a small grey building made of bricks and stones. Several people were already standing in front of the building to greet him. Baroness White-Eiger pointed one by one and introduced Gretel. This is Lord Graf, who is in charge of this hospital by order of the Queen. A little old man with grey hair and a serious face took a step forward with his lips pursed and nodded to greet. This is Mr. Dodge, a senior accountant and the hospital's financial controller. A middle-aged man in a tuxedo and neatly tied tie, who almost strangled himself, came out of the queue and bowed to greet. This is Ms. Haynes, a fifth-level pastor of the Order of the God of Nature. She heard that we were going to build a maternal and infant hospital, so she took the initiative to come over. A petite middle-aged woman with a rosy face and energetic eyes smiled at Gretel. Gretel smiled back, "Spellcaster, my own spellcaster, things will be much easier with this lady here. This is Sister Paria from the Spring Temple, a third-level priest. Considering her age, this young lady really shouldn't be called Mammy." But looking at her lineless navy blue dress, the light blue headscarf that carefully wrapped her hair, and the shiny rosary beads in her hands, Greet could probably guess. This is a priestess who devotes her life to the goddess of spring water and vows not to marry. And such a priestess will devote most of her energy to gynecology and obstetrics, subjects that are inconvenient for men to touch. He nodded hurriedly to Sister Paria and turned to the next caster, a thin man. The man was wearing a robe, with a mage badge on his chest, and 2 bronze stars that were polished brightly. Sure enough, Baroness Whittaker introduced. This is the medical mage of the Royal Mage Corps, Mr. Rubius Thomas. Is there only a second-level medical mage? I hope he is not the only medical mage in the capital, otherwise, the daily medical services that magicians receive are really worrying. Greet groaned silently. The remaining people standing in the second row, whom Mrs. Vidig did not even introduce, were probably the head midwives, the security captain, the washerwoman, and the logistics staff. She just raised her voice and announced the Queen's order. According to the Queen's order, Master Nordmark will take over all medical affairs of the Royal Maternity and Infant Hospital from today. Please cooperate with me. The Queen hopes to see her subjects receive better and safer childbirth care than before. All eyes were on Gretel. Gretel looked from Lord Graf on the far left to Master Thomas on the far right, and then from the far right of the second row to the far left. He didn't know where to start, so he coughed. "Dear gentlemen, fellow spellcasters, and colleagues working in the hospital, hello everyone. I came here to bring some new medical technologies and new spells, hoping to improve the level of obstetrics in the capital. These technologies and spells, together with the casters, nurses and midwives I brought, will be shared with everyone one by one in the next few months. Now, let us first take a look at the working status of the midwives." He turned around and walked towards the poor ward first. Not long after, Gretel's furious roar sounded outside the ward area. "Wash your hands. Change your clothes. Clean the delivery bed. You should clean yourselves. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of